Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to get started here. When Governor Evers last week called on the State Building Commission to release $15 million from the state budget to revamp Wisconsin's correctional facilities. Why? Can you talk to me a little bit about what viewers need to know here?
Yeah, so this $15 million investment is one of the first key steps of the governor's overall realignment plan to be able to modernize our correctional footprint across Wisconsin and affect changes to our prison population and the way we manage and treat people in custody every day across Wisconsin.
And can you walk us through what this would look like?
Yeah, so the plan, really there are a couple main goals of the plan. Number one, skip to the punchline. We have two really facilities that were built in the 1800s. That's Green Bay and Waupun Correctional. And those facilities really are at a point where they could use either upgrading or to be decommissioned. And so one goal is to, again, modernize that correctional footprint and be able to make smart investments in our prison system. Another goal of the plan is to sort of what we call right-size the population. And that is that right now we are over capacity in our prison system. We want to make sure we're supervising and treating people in custody at the right location that they need to be in. And so to be able to modernize those facilities, move people around, do some policy reforms is part of that plan. The first step really is Lincoln Hills closure. We've talked about that for years. That's going to allow us to get those kids closer to home and repurpose that facility up in Merrill, Wisconsin as an adult facility. And from there, there's a number of sort of dominoes that we would move through sequentially in order to realize those goals. And I would say importantly is those goals need to be achieved with several considerations in mind. One of those is doing so safely and responsibly. We also need to look at making sure this plan is fiscally responsible. And so we're not, while there is an investment on the part of the state to modernize these facilities, we're not doing so irresponsibly and spending more money than ultimately we need to. So
yeah, and this kind of goes into my next question, which is something you've been saying here, is modernizing but not necessarily tearing down and rebuilding these facilities. Why that decision? So
well, number one, so the Green Bay facility would be decommissioned at the end of the plan. Waupun Correctional Institution, we would do some pretty significant enhancements there, rebuilding some of the cell halls. There are a number of decisions that we made as we looked at the overall plan. We started with a master facilities plan that was completed back in late 2019, early 2020 as this administration came in to really help inform us about recommendations for our prison system. And that was done by architecture engineer firms. Relied on experts, corrections professionals in the field to help sort of guide what those decision points would be. So,
and do you feel like this modernizing plan would kind of get to the root of the issues with the prison system here?
Yeah, so I do think it's one large step towards it. At the end of the day, I think folks need to remember that over 90% of the people in our prison system are going to release back into our communities. And our number one overall goal is community safely and providing resources and services and safe custody and rehabilitation of those folks so that you and I as taxpayers know that our money is being invested in a wise way. And so that means supervising and treating people in safe facilities that have proper access to group rooms, that have better lines of sight so it's safer for staff. That means treating people in the settings that they were intended to be at versus having a population that's kind of gridlocked. It means providing vocational programming and services to folks. So for example, our plan talks about this thing called a vocational village at Waupun, where we're having men come alongside each other to participate both in classroom and hands-on skills and vocational training and readiness programs so that when they get out, they can be contributing members with family sustaining wages, paying taxes, and sort of making a dent into that labor shortage we have here in Wisconsin.
So it sounds like you're saying this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg here for some of the other things that you guys are looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why that $15 million is so important is the legislature in the last budget made that investment and said we need to do some additional planning and design work around this entire comprehensive plan. And so take that $15 million, do some planning and design, and then come back to us with a more fully vetted plan. And we intend to do that as soon as we possibly can, because every day, every month that we delay that money being allocated is another delay in ultimately either closing Green Bay or getting these reforms in place. So.
And I wanted to ask too, facilities like some of the ones you were mentioning earlier, like Waupun Correctional Institution, have been under some scrutiny the past few years. How would these projects affect that? Yeah,
well, it's like I said earlier, in that the way a facility such as Waupun or Green Bay are built, they were built in this sort of containment model where you have men that are stacked on these different tiers. The cells are small. There's no access to adequate day room or communal living space or group rooms. And so when you have that type of environment, let's put it this way, no one would build prisons that way in today's society. And so again, it's about having safer facilities that are conducive to rehabilitation and treatment. So again, those men and women who are being released are ready to be successful in the community and not just warehoused.
And let's say you do get these $15 million released. Can you give me an estimate of a timeline, what that would look like here?
Yeah, so what that money allows really the Department of Administration to do is to get people under contract, architects, engineers, construction managers, to be able to then fully vet out that plan. We intend to be able to come back yet this session next year and have those projects fully enumerated. And so we'd be looking at, in the next 6 to 9 months, up to a year, to be able to come back to the legislature, which is an aggressive timeline, but we think we can get it done because it's important. And like I said, every minute and day that we take longer just pushes this plan down the line. And the whole arc of the plan is through 2029, 2030. So we want to get moving on the front end as soon as we can.
And the commission's looking at this request on the 28th. How likely do you think it'll be that this gets approved?
Well, we've had some really earnest conversations in the last week with members of the legislature. We think we have pretty good agreement on the overall plan and the release of those funds. But it doesn't mean everything is all baked and done, right? This is going to call for ongoing collaboration and partnership with the legislature as we work to fine-tune those details. So I think as long as everybody involved has that spirit of partnership and collaboration, I think we'll be just fine, and we'll just keep moving forward as a state.
So it sounds like you're confident in the partnership with the legislature.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then kind of last question here for you today is, you're talking about how this could help out in the immediate. Is this something the state would need to look at in the future as well? Let's say we get these funds to modernize these facilities. Is it an ongoing issue, or do you think this really tackles a big part of modernizing those facilities?
Well, again, the $15 million is just that first step for design and planning. The overall project that the governor put forward in this past budget was close to $500 million. 140 million of that, 130 million, of that was for the Dane County juvenile facility to be built, and so that was fully enumerated. So the rest of that plan, 300+ million, is still out there to decommission Green Bay, to really rewrite the narrative of Waupun, to create additional beds at Sanger Powers, to convert Stanley Correctional Institution to a maximum. See, there's all of these pieces that kind of fit together. So that enumeration is still key to keep that plan moving forward, and then we move through the entire arc of that realignment plan.
So it sounds like you're pretty happy with how this is going so far.
Overall, for the most part, but again, they're with a project of this size, I think you always anticipate some bumps in the road. I think the great thing about this plan is there are components of it that everybody is invested in that everybody wants to see done, no matter if you're a community stakeholder, if you're a member of the legislature, if you're the governor. We're all, I think there's too much at stake for us to kind of all go back to our separate corners, and so I think as long as we continue to work together in good faith, that is my goal. That doesn't mean there's not going to be disagreements, and that doesn't mean there are going to have to be difficult discussions along the way. I think that will still happen, but ultimately I think we can get there because we realize the state needs to ultimately get this done. It's not, the time isn't now to continue to kick that can down the lines.
I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, which was being a good steward of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, so, when there are a number of different routes I think we could take when we look at the overall correctional system. We're a monster agency. We have 10,000 employees. We have 37 different facilities. And one could look at it and say, let's close Green Bay, let's close Waupun, let's build a new state-of-the-art 1,000-bed prison. Well, the price tags on that are approaching or maybe even over $1 billion. And when we look at the money that we invest, again, as a taxpayer, if there are ways to promote and ensure community safety without having to invest that type of dollar amount, I think we ought to be looking at that. I've worked in corrections for many, many years, and I would not sign on to any plan that I thought would either be irresponsible use of taxpayer money or one that would compromise safety. And so I think that's what's nice about this plan is that there are some new beds being built. There's significant capital investments being done, but there's also policy reforms in there. When we look at people that maybe are ready to move back into the community, that have completed vocational programming, and that can be supervised safely in the community, get back to their families and get to those family-sustaining jobs too. So I think it's a good combination of both. It's not just, spend no money and continue to do what you're doing, or kick a bunch of people out of prison so we have more space. It's not build a bunch of new prisons. It's a moderate sort of collaborative plan that we've looked at together. So.
And why this $15 million now? Is it something that we realized you needed additional funding for?
Well, so ultimately, the governor's proposal in the last budget was for full enumeration. The legislature thought the plan had enough merit that they decided to invest this $15 million for more planning. So really, again, going back to the importance of getting that money released as soon as possible so we can get the folks doing the work and we don't miss a beat, so we're not sitting here next year at this time still talking about, well, what are we going to do with Green Bay or this rising prison population or whatever it is. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time.